Welcome back to another Captain's video. We're going to go through all the VC and C options for the week, coming right up. Hey, what's up? It's JB from Dr. SuperCoach again, and if this is your first appointment here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming updates. Now, today's episode, as mentioned off the top, and as we do every Thursday or Friday, is about the captaincy decisions we'll be making this week. Now, I have the fixtures here in front of me, if you can see those, and we're going to just go through game by game and assess if there are any captaincy options for the week. So hopefully I don't miss anyone. I do tend to miss people and I get yelled at, and most of the time it works out for the best. If you didn't catch last week's episode, I did recommend Josh Dunkley and Zach Merritt as our captaincy options. So I do hope you got involved in that. Both guys going 150 plus, which is huge. And hopefully I can keep this streak of good scores coming. So first things first, on Friday, I think for starters, I'll actually say that this is looking to be a tough loophole week. A lot of people, if you do only have the one loophole, you've got GWS playing here against Geelong at 4 or 5. That'll be my time, probably not Vic time. And a lot of people still have Roberts, and then there's Constable as well, but there's a chance Constable's potentially sub. We're not quite sure. We'll see what happens when teams are named, which this drops around when teams are named. So you guys will know better than I will as to who you can actually loophole. If you do need a Friday night loophole, you desperately need one. I think I'm going Errol Goulden here. Now, I know last week was a failed Goulden VC. What it does do is it allows us to take a shot at someone who's either going to go around 110 or less, or usually 130 plus. And I really enjoy those guys for vice captaincies because they make me definitive about who my captain is going to be. And generally speaking, the captain is a better shout than the vice captain most weeks. So on the Friday, I don't mind Errol Goulden. He is in good form. I know he only scored 95, I think it was last week. If we can find where Errol Goulden is. Yeah, 96 last week and was my vice captain. So I do understand that. I know he's not particularly in that great form anymore after the back-to-back 150s, but the 150s are never going to keep up, and it's going to take a lull game before they sort of start spiking back up. So against Carlton at the SEG, I don't mind Errol Goulden as a VC. Now this game, I think here presents some pretty good value. So for starters, St Kilda, Jack Steele, I think potentially if you are going into Jack Steele this week, again, if you don't like Errol Goulden or don't have Errol Goulden and you need to make a very early vice captaincy decision, I don't mind Jack Steele. I don't mind James Sicily. I can't remember what week it was. Maybe was it 2 weeks ago against St Kilda? No, maybe 3 weeks ago. And I might just be waffling here, so yes, so against St Kilda here, North Melbourne, 30-point losers. And let me check the player stats here. AFL Fantasy, Jack Zeeble, 168, 36 disposals. Went crazy. Scored about that in SuperCoach as well. I think it was 164 off the top of my head. Look, I don't think they're exactly going to be prone to conceding those types of scores. But I do think there's a chance that, look, not only do I not think they're going to be prone to scoring those types of scores, but I don't think Hawthorn plays the same style as North Melbourne. So I'm not exactly saying Sicily's going to come out and have the opportunity for a big 150 plus. But if you don't have or don't want Errol Goulden, don't want Jack Steele, do need to make an early decision. Obviously in the next game we don't have Clayton Oliver. Not a lot of people have Petrarca. Now we're getting to the stage where we have to have used that up by now. If you have limited loopholes, I think Sicily is fine as a vice captain. I think 3 of his last 4 weeks have been absolutely captainable. So I don't mind James Sicily. I don't mind Jack Steele. Neither of them are my favourite. My favourite is actually, I do like Petrarca without Clayton Oliver this week. Not big on the Fremantle boys, but my favourite is actually Tom Stewart. So Tom Stewart, without a Geelong midfield against GWS, knowing the GWS midfield that's lining up, two of which are going to be Tom Green and Cogs. Obviously, Josh Kelly's not in. Those two guys do seem to have a problem hitting their targets. And when they bomb it forward, they bomb it forward. GMHBA Stadium, Tom Stewart, unlikely to be tagged, I would imagine. I think he's going to roam loose. And I think they're going to need to build from the back more than they have in previous weeks. With less of a midfield. We know Max Holmes is out now, accompanying Dangerfield and a couple of others. I think there's a real opportunity here for Tom Stewart to get a lot of those cheap possessions. And I think he's going to be really crucial as to how they attack during the game as well. They're obviously still going to win their fair share of clearances. I'm not saying they're going to get dominated in the middle. I still think they're going to win the game quite comfortably. So all that considered, I think Tom Stewart is actually a very, very favourable vice-captaincy option this week. I changed my mind on him being an option last week against Fremantle because they do tend to shut down defenders. But I don't think GWS are going to have the same superpowers as what Fremantle do. So Stewart I do like as a vice-captaincy option. Also in the same game, I mentioned before that I don't like captaining either GWS or any of the three GWS players because when Josh Kelly, Canelio and Tom Green all played together, one of them sub-tons every single time. Besides this week. Didn't happen this week. But generally speaking, one of them sub-tons or scores a very, very low ton. Now without Josh Kelly there eating out a lot of the pie, I actually feel like one of Tom Green or Cogs are probably going to go well in this game. Not so much this game, but I think they're going to be a huge talking point against a team like Richmond, who typically give up a lot of midfield points anyway. And then round 13, still no Josh Kelly against North Melbourne as well. So I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at those guys. That's a Sunday game. And what's round 12? How early in the week? That's also Sunday. It's so difficult to captain these guys because one butcher effort and it's just not ideal. But a vice captain of either of those two midfielders I think is acceptable, but Tom Stewart is my favourite in that game. Now comes to my favourite captaincy of the week, and that is captaincy. I would spend my vice captain before this game, and that's Bontempelli against Gold Coast. I targeted Gold Coast last week with Josh Dunkley. I think without Touk Miller, their midfield, although very competitive still, and Matt Rao is an absolute beast. I still think it lacks that defensive motivation. A lot of players, I know Matt Rao gets a lot of tackles, but defensive running is an entirely different story. And I think without Touk Miller, that is where they're lacking. That's where they're getting split open by opposition players and teams. I think even though it's in the Northern Territory, it might be a bit more slippery. I think Bontempelli does absolutely fine in those conditions and goes quite well. In regard to Tim English, I think obviously Jared Witts is effectively a tagger, taking away a lot of hit-outs to advantages against Ruckman, opposition Ruckman. So Bontempelli is my favourite captain of the week. The reason the other person I shouted last week, Zach Merritt, isn't, is because last week I saw O'Neill start outside the stoppages, outside the CBAs, and then be the first person in to the CBA after it's bounced up. So for a secondary ball up, or as soon as open play begins and the spread begins, O'Neill comes in and tags. So I feel like although he might not be in all the CBAs, Zach Merritt will still be able to do his thing. He probably goes well. He probably goes right. They probably win this game quite comfortably. I still think he's held, at least his ceiling is held low enough to just say, you know what, I'm not going to captain that. So Bontempelli, my absolute favourite captaincy. Now, Sunday actually gives up a bit of a mixed bag. There are some really good players playing Sunday, which we don't always consistently have. Connor Rosie, I do like targeting the Richmond midfield, but Richmond, new coach, and at the MCG, which Port Adelaide do not enjoy playing at. This is a real danger game for Port. So for that reason, I'm not going to be captaining Connor Rosie. I don't trust that at all. On Richmond's side of things, they don't really have any captaincy options that I like considering. Collingwood versus North. Now, this is obviously Nick Dacos. North Melbourne, I'm not quite sure if they've got a tagging type of game in them. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to run with Nick Dacos. I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Dacos got 15 more tags for the rest of the season. But I would be surprised if they just suddenly held him under 100. So I still think he's going to turn up. I don't trust him as captain. I'm going to avoid him as well this week. Now the final game, and Jay-Z and all that, I don't trust as a captain, good vice captain. The final game of the week gives us a few options. Laird, Dawson, Lockie, Neal, and Dunkley all playing this game. At Adelaide Oval, I find this one very, very difficult to predict. I think Crows either get rolled over or they're fiercely competitive. We saw Brisbane get rolled round 1 at Adelaide Oval against Port Adelaide. The Crows seem to have lost a little bit of momentum, and their forward line seems to be a little bit in and out at the moment with not a lot of continuity. So I'm not sure Laird or Dawson are the players to captain with a lot of confidence, whereas Neal and Dunkley, away from the Gabba, I mean, Dunkley at Marvel, funnily enough, is even better, but away from the Gabba, away from their home ground, I think if this one was at the Gabba, I'd be okay captaining Neal or Dunkley. But at Adelaide Oval, I just have a feeling that they just get restricted in some way. I'm not sure what Ben Keys is going to do for this game, whether he tags or not. I highly doubt he tags. He doesn't generally take a midfielder. He generally takes someone who's a half backman, and Brisbane are really low on those stocks right now, despite Rich probably coming back. So I don't have a lot of love for the Sunday captain this week. I think we're going to be spending it on this Saturday night. I think at all costs, you want to do something into Bontempelli. I think Bont is definitely due for a big game, whether that is Goulden, whether it's someone in this St Kilda Hawthorn game, or whether it is Tom Stewart. I think, personally, I'm going to go Tom Stewart into Bontempelli. I'm pretty much locking that in. I know it's a tight turnaround in the games, but we'll have full understanding at that point as to whether we should take or not. But for some reason, if you do need that earlier vice captain, whether it be loophole or whether you can't make a decision that close to the next game starting, Goulden, Sicily, Jack Steele, I'm okay with. Sinclair, I think, is still hit or miss. I know he had an unbelievable game on the weekend, 160. That was scoring 2 goals from the midfield in that last quarter. Dominated as a halfback all game, thrown into the midfield late. They love doing that. I think he'll get midfield minutes again. Midfield minutes don't necessarily help him. I think they limit him a little bit. So I'd rather someone with a consistent role doing what they're best at, like Jack Steele or James Sicily. So that is why I've opted away from him. Now, I always forget people. Not that I own all the high-ranking guys. Marshall, St Kilda versus Hawthorn. No, I don't like that. Taranto versus Port. No, don't like that either. I think that's pretty much where I sit. If I can just quickly go to players and have a look at who is averaging the highest. Liberatore against Gold Coast. I actually do like that, to be honest. 5.9% of players own Liberatore. Petrarca against Fremantle. I didn't realise it was up to 15.4% ownership. I assume that goes higher again. As we see, no one's trading him in. That's great. But against Fremantle, I think he actually goes pretty well. The problem is like logically you think, oh, no, Clayton Oliver is going to get more of the pie. It just makes him more of a tag option. And I think now that he's more likely to get tagged, I don't know if Fremantle are necessarily going to do that, but if they do, there's only one option to tag. So I think it can actually work against them, work not in their favour as much as what we think. Caleb Sarong, 12% of people own him. Well done to you. Not against Melbourne, I wouldn't think. Then we got Witsy, Ryan, Butters. Yeah, I'm not confident on any of these guys. Actually, to be honest, Butters, 8.7% of ownership. He actually loves playing Richmond. He scored 115 or something in a half against them before he got injured either last year or the year before. But he does really, really enjoy playing them. But again, at the MCG, new coach, it is difficult to straight captain him. He would be the best VC of the week if it was on a Friday night or something. But I think that essentially is it. I don't like anyone enough to really headhunt here and go through the list. So I think that's going to do it. I probably have missed someone. If I have, please let me know. But that's going to summarize. That's going to do it for today's video. Now, as per usual, if I did miss someone, if you're going to go someone left field, if you have a stat handy that maybe I didn't consider, please let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, of course, and if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy some of our other content. A lot of it at the moment is just the captaincy stuff. Some of the stuff will be linked up on the screen, I'm sure, and you can support us by following the links to either our merch store or our Patreon. Thanks everyone for listening, and I'll catch you same time next week.